James chapter 4 from verse 13. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will travel to such and such a city and spend a year there and do business and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring, what your life will be. For you are like vapor that appears for a little while, then vanishes. Instead, you should say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So it is sin to know the good and yet not do it. Continuing in chapter 5, come now, you rich people, weep and wail over the miseries that are coming on you. Your wealth has rotted and your clothes are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have stored up treasure in the last days. Look, the pay that you withheld from the workers who mowed your fields cries out, and the outcry of the harvesters has reached the ears of the Lord of armies. You have lived luxuriously on the earth and have indulged yourselves. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned, you have murdered the righteous who does not resist you. And some of the most challenging teachings the Bible has for us as Christians in Australia are about money. And that's because it can be hard to know how they apply to us, how they apply to people in a prosperous country. Teachings like what Jesus said, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And many of us ask the question, I might not be rich by Australian standards, but I'm meeting my needs. Practically speaking, I'm better off than many rich people were back when the Bible was written. I might not have a palace, but I might have an iPhone, or I have access to penicillin. I have modern medicine. I might not be as rich as many of the ancient people were, or a very small minority of the ancient rich, but my dollar can go further in some ways than the denarius of the richest Roman ruler. So the question is, am I that rich man whose pathway to the kingdom of heaven is harder, is more difficult than the pathway of the through the eye of the needle? And elsewhere, Jesus says you can't serve both God and money. And the question arises, what does it mean to serve money? How would I know if I'm serving money rather than God? Because we understand that money is a reality of life. It's a resource we're supposed to use wisely. And we are supposed to look after the people that we've been given to care for. The Apostle Paul said, if anyone does not provide for his own family, especially for those of his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. We're commanded to care for our own, which requires money. We can't take an easy black or white picture of things. Some people want to say that money is all bad. It's the root of all evils. In fact, the Bible says it's a root of all kinds of evil. Money is a resource that we have that has a great potential to corrupt us. The question is, what's the point when we go from serving God with our money to serving money? What does that look like? I think it's that love of money that James, the brother of Jesus, is trying to illustrate for us in today's passage. It's what he's trying to identify and rebuke. So shall we get into it and listen for his answer to this question? Do you serve God or money? First question is, what's at the heart of your plans or of your goals? What's the basis on which you plan your future? Let's read chapter 4 from verse 13 again. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow, we will travel to such and such a city and spend a year there and do business and make a profit. This is a person making business plans. He's planning how he's going to make money. Verse 14, yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring, what your life will be. Some translations say, what is your life? For you are like a vapor that appears for a little while, then vanishes. Do you see that James is painting a picture of a person whose view of the future centers around money? This is a person looking at the future and asking, what can I do to secure my own fortune, my own fate, my own prosperity, or maybe even the prosperity of my family? This person might be thinking of the people he's been given to care for as he makes his plans. But in a way, the question that he's asking is, how will I establish my life? What's my life's foundation? And the answer that this hypothetical person brings to the table is a business plan. It's, I'll do X, Y, Z. I'll be set up for life. I'll have my retirement plan. I'll be able to buy what I want when I want. So what's James saying? Is James saying don't make a business plan? Don't be thoughtful in how you live and how you make money. Well, I don't think that's his point, because what does he say in verse 14? Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are like vapor that appears for a little while, then vanishes. His point isn't that it's wrong to make plans. He's looking at someone who thinks that they can forge their own destiny, that they can control the world, control the future through their material possessions. And James is saying, don't think for a second, don't you dare, that you're the one who controls the future. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So how can you think that you'll control what will happen a year from now? And I think this is the core of the first part of the answer to our question. Do you serve God or money? Well, when you examine your heart, when you look into yourself, do you think and do you act as if you control the future? Because that's the allure of money, if you think about it. Because when you have money, you can control the world in little ways. You know, you can buy some Panadol and you can take away the headache. Or you can buy a good novel and you can take away hours of boredom. Or you can hire a good lawyer who might just be able to get you out of years in prison. When you have money, or when your money goes as far as ours does in this country, we are used to shaping little bits of our future. And when we do that, we have a tendency to trick ourselves into thinking we control the whole thing. James is saying that's an illusion. Money might be able to get you, a nice mattress so you can get some better sleep, or a nicer car and the attention that comes with it, or You might be faster to get your hip replaced. You can control these things, but it doesn't stop you from dying. It won't prevent the realities of loss or grief. It doesn't, as the Beatles said, money can't buy me love. So when it comes to the real big things, if you are deceived by the lie of money, if you fall too far into the practice that it's inviting you into, if you see the future as something you control, then you've been hoodwinked. You've been taken in by a fickle master. So James is saying, don't look at the world through the lie of money. If you know anything about the future, you know that you don't control it, but God does. God is in control. I think we know that, but the question is, do we act like it? Verse 15. Instead, you should say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So it is sin to know the good and yet not do it. Do you ever hear Christians talking about the future and they add this little addendum to the end? They say, if the Lord wills, or Lord willing. And this is where that comes from, and it comes from the understanding that God is the one in control. As Proverbs 16 verse 9 says, a person's heart plans his way, but the Lord determines his steps. Our efforts and our plans can dissolve in a moment, but Ecclesiastes 3:14, everything God does will be forever. There is nothing to add to it, and there is nothing to take from it. If we understand our place in the world, our grasp on the future, there's no sense in making money our target or our guide. Money gives us the illusion of control, but God has the real thing. It makes no sense to set your sight on wealth when the one who determines the future has invited you to be his child. So James says we should say, if the Lord wills, I'll do this or that. And I think that's a fine thing to say, to literally say, Lord willing, when you're talking about the future. I don't think James's point here is really about adding those words at the end of our sentences. It's easy to add a couple of words to a sentence. This December I'm going to go to New Zealand and see family, Lord willing. But it's another thing to really mean it. To look at the future in a way that doesn't say, I'm going to do this, but I want to be part of what God's doing. So we have to ask the question, we have to be serious with ourselves. We have to be brutally honest. When you plan your career, where is God? When you plan your trips and your holidays, the big expenses, where is God? When you decide how to use your money, or when you're thinking about how you're going to get it, where is God? This isn't fundraising, by the way. I'm not telling you to increase your tithes. I'm asking, where is God in it? And of course, I'm not immune from this question. As I was planning this sermon, I realized that when I was last paid, I had set aside my savings. I paid some bills and this and that, and I'd completely forgotten about my offering. I'd completely forgotten about God. So I have to ask, where was God in that? This is not about setting your own goals and then just adding on some throwaway God willing. It's about making God's will your goal. But for so many of us, this just isn't intuitive. We're so used to using money to change the future. That's just the way our world works. But it's futile. Chapter 5, verse 1. Come now, you rich people, weep and wail over the miseries that are coming on you. Your wealth has rotted and your clothes are moth-eaten. Your gold and your silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you and will eat your flesh like fire. You have stored up treasure in the last days. So up till now, James has been talking about those who have plans to make money, whose plans actually were all about money, whose view of the future centered on what they had. Now he's talking to the guy who's implemented the plan, who's gone out, who's done his business, and he's actually achieved his goal. He's made the money, he's stored up his treasure, he's used his wealth to control the future, and it seems to have worked. And if you were in that position, you might say to James, well, actually, I can make money. I can implement a good business plan. I can reach my own goals in my own way. This is the experience that I have. But James is saying, if your life's success is a matter of financial acumen, you're in the worst position of all, because you sort of confused short-term success with long-term success. You might have a lovely retirement fund and a nice house for the next few decades, but from God's point of view, that's short-term. You've staked your life on things rather than God, and things rot, things decay. Clothes are eaten by moths, houses fall apart, savings disappear to inflation. And if your things don't decay in your lifetime, then you most certainly will. There's one thing that's sure. There's one thing that's certain. There's only one thing that doesn't fade away, and that's God. As Psalm 102 says, long ago, you, O God, you established the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you will remain. All of them will wear out like clothing. You will change them like clothes, and they will pass away. But you are the same, and your years will never end. If you put your trust in money, if you plan your life around money and not God, it's a little bit like investing in Blockbuster. You know Blockbuster? Some of the young people here might not know Blockbuster. In Ellenbrook, we had Video Easy, where you could go and rent videos and DVDs. I'm sure an investment in Blockbuster looked like a great idea in 1995. It looked like a great long-term strategy, because who doesn't love watching movies? I mean, surely that's a business model that can only grow. But you see, that's what it's like to give in to the siren call of money, of physical possessions and of wealth. That's what it's like to plan your future around money and not God. Money's not evil. It's a root of all kinds of evil, but money itself is a resource. It's a resource that God has given us to do his will. But what a dreadful thing it is when we confuse the two. Money is money. Money is not God's will. But money is money and God is God, and that's that. James has one more indicator of whether we serve money or God, and that's how do you treat people? What will you do to people for money? Verse 4. Look, the pay that you withheld from the workers who mowed your fields cries out, and the outcry of the harvesters has reached the ears of the Lord of armies. You have lived luxuriously on the earth and have indulged yourselves. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned, you have murdered the righteous who does not resist you. You can say that you serve God, but the real question is, do you care more about his people or your possessions? Do you care more about your fellow Christian, or do you care more about your savings goals? Here's the clearest sign that you serve money rather than God, which is that you're willing to use money, or use people rather, to get money. You're willing to slander or backstab your colleagues for that promotion, or you're willing to scam or mistreat a customer because your boss threatened that he will fire you otherwise. What are you willing to do to keep that steady paycheck? And this is a pretty obvious thing, but we do need to be reminded that if you serve God, you're going to pay attention to what he's told you. You'll listen to what Jesus said. You'll work to put it into practice. Some people will say that because we're saved by faith, we don't need to follow Jesus' teachings. But following Jesus' teachings is exactly what it means to be a servant of God. If you want to honor and serve Jesus, who died to save you, then you need to listen to his warning of judgment when he spoke of the judge who, when the time comes, will accept some, but to others he will say, Matthew 25, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you didn't take me in. I was naked, and you didn't clothe me. Sick and in prison, and you didn't take care of me." Then they too will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or without clothes or sick or in prison and not help you?" Then he will answer them, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." So, are you serving Jesus, or are all those things just a bit too expensive? Because this isn't hypothetical. There is a judgment coming. There's a time when God will separate the sheep from the goats, the people who made Jesus their Lord from the people who only said it. How hard it is for a rich person to enter God's kingdom, because money has the power to lull us into a false sense of security. Money gives us the empty promise of control. It can draw our hearts away from God. We in this prosperous country need to be vigilant. We need to turn our hearts to God's plan rather than our own. We need to find the career he wants for us, to live the way he wants us to live, to save the way he wants us to save. We need to be honest with ourselves about whether we're making excuses to follow money or we're using our money to follow God. Jesus said, "Whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life because of me will find it." If you want to have full autonomy and full control over your own destiny, then follow the money and see what it does for you. If you want true life, good life, the life that Jesus died to give you, there is only one way to find it, and that's to give up the control, to give your destiny over to God. And as Jesus said, to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your mind and soul and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Serving God means making Jesus your Lord, but it's not just saying that Jesus is Lord, it's living it. It's serving Jesus. And Jesus is so worth serving because he's the only Lord ever to die in our place. He's the only one who could ever take our guilt before God on himself. He died the death that we deserve. He paid the debt that we could never pay, so that when you put your trust in him, you can live your life not as a slave to sin, not as a slave to money, but as a child of the everlasting God whose future is secure only in him. Give your life to Jesus, put him in charge, and he will give you the only life worth living. Let's pray. Living God, loving God, may we come before you with humble and fearful hearts. Please let your will be done in us. Let nothing block the leading of the Spirit. We submit our lives to you again fully, and may we do so always, again and again. Help us turn our eyes upon Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Josh.